information is included in the presentation. Ryan has a copy of that. Also, if you just Google FDEP Savannah Callum, my name, contact will pop up if you have any questions. And if you need a copy of the presentation as well, feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to send it out. And I'm going to pass it off to Alyssa, and I'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to step out for a bit.
Hey everyone, my name is Alyssa Tessier. I'm an engineering specialist for the department. I work on our water, wastewater, and stormwater permitting team. Prior to that, I was in potable water compliance. I've been with the state for about 5 years now. And I'm going to begin the presentation. We're just going to go over the department and give you some knowledge on that, and then we'll carry it over to Savannah to go over the stormwater rule change and the nitty-gritty of that.
Great. Advance. There we go.
All right, so this is our agenda. We're going to go over the overview of the leadership. We're going to go over operating agreement, the permitting programs, types of permits we issue, and then Savannah's going to go over rule change. All right, the DEP is the state's lead agency for environmental management, stewardship, protecting our air, water, and land. The regulatory program safeguard natural resources by overseeing our permitting and compliance activities. This is our leadership. We have the Secretary, Alexis Lambert. We have our Deputy Secretary, John Truitt. And we did have Jason Andriata, but he is no longer with the department. So, and then there's just our overview of our leadership team. So the mission is to conserve and manage the state's natural resources and enforce its environmental laws. Our vision is to advance Florida's position as a world leader in protecting natural resources while growing the state's economy. Our values, no, it's okay. We've got leadership, integrity, accountability, communication, innovation, and service. Our district is the Northwest District that goes from Escambia County to Jefferson County, but then there's also 5 other districts. We have Northeast, Central, South, Southeast.
Southwest is Tampa.
Oh, Southwest. Oops. Florida. Okay, this is our direct leadership for Northwest District. We have our district director, Elizabeth Orr. Under her, we have our assistant district director, that's Brandy Smith. She's over our compliance assurance program, that's wastewater compliance, potable water compliance, waste cleanup compliance, tanks compliance. Am I missing anybody there? The presentation, environmental resource permitting, compliance purposes. We have Kim Allen. She's under our permitting and waste cleanup program. Blake Chapman is our business planning program administrator. And then Mark Sumner, he works here in Panama City. He's in our branch office environmental administrator. All right, so in the Northwest District, we do have an operating agreement with the Northwest Florida Water Management District. It states that the department is responsible for review and final action on applications and notices for permits, petitions for variances, and verification of exemptions for the following activities. A of which is work over submerged lands and state owned lands. Second of which is a systems, stormwater system, ERP permit, permitting area that is consisting of 3 contiguous parcels of land that are have a single ownership containing or proposed to contain only 1 single family dwelling, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, all of the dwelling units. Third is work that is done part seaward of the coastal construction control line in waterworks. The fourth being ecosystem management areas. And then the last being military base installations. All right, our permitting programs, we have the environmental resource permitting, ERP, we have water and wastewater, air, waste cleanup, and solid waste. All right, ERP, the activities that we permit for the environmental resource permitting program are activities in, on, or over surface waters, wetlands, and state-owned waters. They do dredge and fill, docks, piers, boat ramps, shoreline stabilization, stormwater management, permit revisions, modification, state land leases, easements, and then some federal level permitting. Our wastewater permitting program deals with domestic, that is sanitary sewage, residences, businesses, and then industrial, which is from industrial activities. wastewater. We do new wastewater permitting facilities. We do permit renewals for those, biosolids. We do collection systems, permitting. That's your systems to your home businesses and such. And then we also do MPDS, industrial permitting. That is your concrete batch plants and petroleum contaminated sites. We do potable water permitting. That's new drinking water facilities and treatment plants, distribution systems. That is the connections through your neighborhoods, through your businesses. We do renewals and revisions as well in the water permitting. Potable water clearances. That's putting permits into work and into service. And then monitoring and treatment well oversight. Our air permitting program, they issue air quality monitoring, air construction and air operating permits, state and federal compliance, and asbestos notifications. And then finally, our waste cleanup and solid waste, they are issuing disposal and processing site permitting, landfills, waste transfer stations, tires, storm debris disposal. They do investigations of soil and groundwater contamination, and they investigate cleanup of hazardous waste sites. Right, I'm gonna let Savannah take it away.
The reason we're here.
Yep.
The stormwater rule change. For all of those programs too that Alyssa just listed on the slides. Again, if you need a copy, feel free to ask me. Ryan has it as well. For those in the room, Alyssa and I have business cards on the table. Feel free to grab one, shoot us an email. We're more than happy to send it to you. There's general email inbox contacts for those or phone number contacts. So if you have questions that aren't ERP stormwater, something beyond the scope of this, I recommend reaching out just to those common sources. You'll get, for most of them, a quicker, better answer. I do have notes. I promise I'm not going to read from them. There's a lot of information in this. I want to make sure we hit all the key points, but left time for questions. So the new stormwater criteria, there's really kind of two camps it fell into when it was signed by the governor in summer of 2024. So there's the water quality changes. So moving from presumptive criteria where the required treatment volume was 1 inch of rainfall over your developed area for the majority of BMPs. There are a couple different ones. And then your operation and maintenance plan. So operation and maintenance plan has always been required. Under chapter 62-330, there's a bit more requirements now. Inspection and inspection frequencies have also changed for all the BMPs. So that's all included in Applicant's Handbook Volume 1. Other big difference is your water quality went from your water management district specific criteria in Volume 2. It's now all in Volume 1. It's the same statewide. Volume 2 still exists. It has specific criteria for your BMPs, but not so much related to their treatment efficiency. There is links to all the volumes in here. They're all hyperlinked. Again, if you Google FDEP Applicant's Handbook Volume 1, they're going to show up. There is a common mailbox for questions regarding the rule change. This goes to our division office. Feel free to reach out to it. It's still active. It's still monitored. If you have a question for a specific project in this area, though, I recommend reaching out to Alyssa or I. We're a bit more familiar with the area. We have a lot more answers now than we did 6 months ago, a year ago about this rule change. So we'll probably just be able to get to you quicker. And again, if you guys ask us a question we don't have an answer to, we want to hear, we want to be able to ask so that we have that answer for you guys and other stakeholders in the future. Okay, so this little link down here, it's the Stormwater Resource Center. Our division team put this together. It's all the new documents, all the changes, and there's a good summary table of all the changes in Volume 1 with those kind of hyperlinked out so you can go see those changes. Again, with this, if you don't have access to the PowerPoint, you can just Google FDEP ERP Stormwater Resource Center. It's going to be the first thing that pops up. Okay, so what projects are affected by this rule change, particularly the nutrient reduction requirements? Any new ERP individual permit or major modifications to existing permits. Major modifications are defined in Section 6.2 of Volume 1. Generally speaking, if you're modifying the stormwater pond in any significant way, you're changing your BMP type. The rule is kind of a gray area when it comes to expansion of ponds. Of course, if the pond is being expanded to serve a new area, that's a major modification. Typically, slight expansions to fix function issues aren't, but call us, let us know. We're happy to discuss that with you. Things like that. Anything you do, it bumps it. That's only if you're doing anything that affects runoff. So additional impervious surfaces, changes to the pond, That's going to knock you. If you come in, you're not touching your pervious surfaces, you're not touching your pond, but you need to fix something for mitigation for the rest of your ERP, we're not applying this. But again, those are kind of handled case by case. Section 3.1.2 of Volume 1 has grandfathering provisions. So if you think your project might be grandfathered from the new rule, take a look at that, read through it, ask us if you have questions. With those grandfathering provisions, though, for the majority of those, we don't know that your project's grandfathered. So if we get an application and you don't tell us it's grandfathered, you don't provide us that assurance that it meets that criteria, we're going to review it under this new criteria, and you're going to get a lengthy RAI from us and a lot of back and forth. So if you think it is, again, call us, reach out, discuss it. And if you apply, give us that information so we know. So again, the nutrient reduction is focusing only on total nitrogen TN and total phosphorus TP, and it's looking at the pre-development versus post-development conditions for your site. And we'll get more into that in the presentation. So the volume does mention TSS. We're not really reviewing TSS. So in 8.3.1 of Volume 1, it mentions having this 80% reduction in TSS for most sites, 95% for sites that are within an OFW or upstream of an OFW within the same HUC 12 basin. You'll see this throughout. So those are your required percent productions, but everything has this kind of clause of post versus pre. Your post-development rate, even if you're hitting 80% reduction, 95% reduction, it still can't exceed your pre-development condition. So if you have some site that you have a really, really low pre-development value for TSS, TP, TN, and you're hitting that 95% reduction, it might be more. You might not be less than that pre-development condition. So that always holds. Like I said, we're not really reviewing TSS because the rule states that if you're meeting your TN and TP reductions, we're assuming you're meeting TSS. But this is the rule. Want to make everyone aware of it. But it's not something that we're typically checking in our reviews just because of that presumption clause in Volume 1. Okay, so again, if you have the presentation, these tables are your friend. I stole them from our division team. I did not make them. They just put the language in section 8.3 into a table. I think it's a little easier to visualize. So it's broken up here on the far left-hand side of you guys. Kind of the different scenarios, goes into the percent reduction, both TN and TP. And again, if you have additional criteria for most of these, it's going to be that post less than pre. Some of them for impaired basins, it wants a net improvement. If you're meeting these reductions, for the most case, we're going to assume that. So all new developments, 80% TP, 55% TN. That's the baseline. We call that all sites criteria. So if you're talking to us and we say, oh, does it meet all sites criteria? It's this criteria right here at the top. Then we get into different criteria within your HUC 12 subwatershed. The department does have a map of HUC 12 subwatersheds. There's a link to that later in the presentation. I have it bookmarked. It's a great resource. So when you're looking at your site, you're not just looking, under the old rule, if you're looking at an impaired water body, you essentially had to be discharging directly into that water body. You're very, very near when we felt the site's discharge could have an impact on that receiving water. Now it's if it's in the same HUC 12 and upstream of. So if this, try to do it to the laptop. If this is your HUC 12, it's this perfect rectangle, and your site's up here, and you have an OFW or impaired water body within the boundaries of the HUC 12 down here, it has to meet these criteria. If you're down here, and the site is upstream of, you cannot move water this way. You don't have to meet it. So it's discharged directly to or upstream of. If you can demonstrate, when we're looking at a map, we're basically just looking, where's the site? Where's the major surface water bodies that we think it's going to? If you think your site is not hydrologically connected to that downstream water, let us know. Tell us how. We're willing to review it. It's not just, for most sites here, it's going to be you're north of the Gulf. You're going south. So that's not the case for every site, but that's how we're going to obviously look at it without any additional information. So if you think you're not upstream of, let us know. The other unique scenario is if we have a site where you're on the border of two HUC 12s, right on there, we typically take a look at both. Again, if you can demonstrate we're not discharging to this adjacent one, we're not impacting it, we're willing to review that, it really becomes a case-by-case scenario. So those are kind of the questions we've been getting on that. With impairments, when you look at a DEP impairment map, it's going to give you all these different categories. We're only looking at 4A, 4B, and 5. If it's 4D, it's on a study list. I don't want to say it's not impaired, but it's not on the list for impaired. So if it's 4D, we don't consider it. This is not in the rule, and that's why it's not on the slide. There's been a lot of talk with the department about what is a qualifying impairment. If it's nutrients, TN, TP, chlorophyll A, anything that's explicitly a nutrient, you have to meet your impairment percent reductions, be it impaired or with OFW. If it's something else, if it's a metal, if it's iron, if it's something that's clearly not related to nutrients, we're kind of reviewing them on a case-by-case basis. We're asking the engineer of record for assurance that their activity is not going to further cause or contribute to that because of this net improvement kind of criteria. So that's a gray area. That's why it's not on the slide. It's being discussed, I think, on a weekly basis. We have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's very fluid. It's always kind of changing the details. So give us a call. Let us know. We're happy to discuss with you. And then additional criteria. This is for strictly redevelopment sites. Little bit lesser of a criteria. Again, because we're kind of giving credit for you're redeveloping a site, it's an existing site, we're making an improvement, but we're not holding it to those higher percent reductions. Also notice there's no pre, less than post. It's just the percent reductions for these. There's also a clause in here for if you are in a basin that's part of a BMAP or has a TMDL, you can work to meet those criteria and not necessarily have to meet these to a T. Again, those are case-by-case things. Call us, let us know. We're happy to discuss. Let's see, where am I? Okay, so here's a good example of that pre, less than post, because that's a big question we get. So in this first scenario, you have a pre-development loading of 20 pounds per year, post-development of 25 pounds per year. So a very slight increase from that pre to post. Your 80% reduction is going to knock you down to 5 pounds per year. 5 is less than 20, 80% holds. Percent reduction is what we're reviewing too. However, if you have a big difference, you have a pre-development loading of 4, post of 25, your 80% reduction only gets you down to 5 pounds per year. You're still above your pre-development rate. So you're going to have to reduce further to get that rate less than or equal to 4 pounds per year. So again, this is a hyperlink if you have it. You can Google DEP HUC 12 map. It's the first thing that shows up. So this map has programmed in it the HUC 12 subwatershed and the waters not attaining standards layer. So that's your impaired water bodies. Again, we're looking at within the same HUC 12. It's a 12-digit number. If you click on it, it gives you the same 12-digit number. You're in the same HUC 12. The map's also really nice because it has this really bold red line around your HUC 12. So you can get a really good visualization. I've been reviewing some projects, taking a screenshot of that, taking a screenshot of the site and kind of see where they fit in. Again, especially on some of those border sites. So this map, and this has been updated, this language is old, it doesn't automatically contain the OFW layer. They have edited this map where you can now you can add an OFW layer, so you can both check your OFW and impaired water bodies. In that, if not, you could use a DEP OFW map direct. There's other resources to get that water's not attaining standards in OFW. That's what we're using when we get your application. So first thing we do, we open that map, we check your HUC 12, we look if we, to see if your site is clearly discharging directly to an OFW or impaired water body. If it's impaired, what are those impairments? What category are they? Or if we think it might be upstream of. So all the calculations you need for this, you can use modeling. BMP Trains is the most popular one we're seeing with these. You can do all these calculations by hand. They're very easy. For our reviews, we built an Excel spreadsheet that we put your inputs in. It spits out the outputs if they're reasonably the same. Sometimes we round a little different. We say your application's good. So that's how we're checking it rather than going through each step, especially with people using different methods, different approaches. These calculations are very straightforward. They are plug and chug. So, alternative calcs can be used to demonstrate this that aren't the model, that aren't in section 9. You have to justify how they're providing the same information. Again, the calcs in section 9 are very, very easy. I would recommend just using those when in doubt. We've had a couple folks have issues with BMP trains or some of the other software. Our advice to them, if you can't figure it out, do the hand calcs. I know it's going to take you longer, but there's no questions about what's going on there. Biggest thing we're seeing too is offsite stormwater. If it is commingling with runoff on your site, you have to include it. So, if it bypasses, if it doesn't commingle, we don't have to look at everything upstream coming into your basin to your site. If it commingles, it has to be included though as part of your analysis. So we're going to get into some of these very helpful tools that are in the appendices of Applicant's Handbook Volume 1 as we kind of go through the calculations. So you'll see it a bit later. There's all these wonderful tables that help with calculating your runoff coefficient values for retention systems, your treatment efficiency. It's based on your meteorological zone. This is in Appendix M of Volume 1. It's nice and color coded. We have zones 1, 2, and 4 in the department's Northwest District. All the counties are wholly within one zone. For our district, there's nothing that's split. So you just find a county map. You look, okay, we're in Bay County. We're zone 1. That's all we're looking for. And then next slide. Similar in Appendix M, when we're calculating your pre and post development loads, it's on an annual basis. So it has an average annual rainfall for your area. Some of these are kind of on borders of lines. It's hard to tell. If it's close, roundabout, we'll take it. We'll also accept case-by-case local studies that maybe have more accurate information. Again, let us know if you're doing that. Let us know where that data is coming from to show that it's at least as accurate as this. So there are some options out there, but this is generally what we're looking at during our reviews. Okay. Other questions we're getting. Directly connected and not directly connected impervious. This is getting plugged into your calculations. We'll see that. I have the equations here in a second. So your directly connected impervious areas, I'm going to read this so I don't mess it up. They consist of the impervious areas that are directly connected to the stormwater conveyance system and it's directly connected. Or if they have generate a shallow concentrated flow over a short pervious area, so 10 feet. So if we have a parking lot, and we have 5 feet of grass and it goes overland flow into that pond, that's directly connected. If it goes over a larger area, we'll look at that as more of a non-directly connected. So for our calculations, we look at it as a percentage of the total development, not the impervious areas. So sorry, people online, you can't see this room. This room, it is a big carpeted room with a big conference table in the center. So if we were looking at this room, we have a table here with my computer on it, big conference table, those are our impervious areas. We're adding those up and comparing them to the entire site. We're not saying, okay, well, this table that's holding the computer isn't connected to the stormwater pond. It's not directly connected, therefore we're not counting it. It's all your impervious surfaces. Or it's the directly connected is a portion of your site, not the impervious surfaces. I worded that bad, I'm sorry. You're not directly connected impervious. That's all your pervious areas. Flow of at least 10 feet. So again, this is less than 10 feet. At least 10 feet of undisturbed pervious areas with soil groups A or B. 20 feet for all other soil groups. You can demonstrate that narrow width provides sufficient infiltration to disconnect any areas that we might think are directly connected based on these kind of foot-based distances, these length-based distances. Let us know, give us that information. Again, a lot of this is very case by case, it's site specific. If you don't tell us, we don't know, and we're going to review it to the general standard. Okay, so here are these tables we talked about with the meteorological zone, and I'll explain that. So these tables are in Appendix N. These are your ROC calculations. It's your mean annual runoff coefficient. We're using these in your calculations for your pre and post development loading rates. So an ROC of 0 is anything that's naturally occurring pervious undeveloped condition. Once you start developing the site, you're going to knock that ROC up. It's a function of your curve number for your site and your percent directly connected impervious areas. These tables don't look great. I've complained about them. I don't know that they'll get fixed. So when you look at this, it's very unclear what your curve number is and what your not directly connected impervious is, because you just have this cell up here that has in DCIA and CN, and it doesn't tell you what direction it goes. Your percent DCIA is this x-axis, your CN is this y-axis. How I always remind myself that is I could have a 0% DCIA, but I can't have a 0 CN. So that's how I remind myself. It's based on your meteorological zone. So there's 5 of these. So if you're in zone 1 for Bay County, we look at zone 1. If you use zone 2, I'm not going to know where your numbers came from. And how we use it is you just find the intersection for your site. So we did for this a curve number of 80, a directly connected impervious of 45%. It's at 0.471. That's kind of circled there. You can interpolate these if you're in between values. Have fun with that. But most sites, you're not going to get these clean numbers in sets of 5. So we can do that. Again, we check it just to make sure it's reasonable. If it's off by 1,000th, we're not going to say your number's wrong. But just if it's kind of reasonable in that set of numbers. So now we're getting into the calculations. And this is where I'm going to look at my notes to make sure I hit all the points I want. So this isn't required by volume 1. We're asking it on almost every REI we get. Smaller sites, it's not as, I don't want to say necessary, but not as necessary. Larger sites, we really want to see it, a summary table. In your executive summary of the site, similar for those of you that put these together when you do attenuation for your storm events, and we'll get a pre versus post, and we can clearly see, okay, the pre-development rate was 100 cubic feet per second, the post-development's 50. There's a reduction. We're providing attenuation for this event. We like the summary table. It makes it a lot easier for us reviewing, especially when you are using modeling software. Sometimes, depending on how it's formatted in the report, it can be easy to miss numbers, miss values, and we want to make sure that we're reviewing accurately. I always tell people this too. It's not to scare you. Anyone from the public can ask about your application with DEP. It's public information. They can petition your application. We're on the same side of you. DEP is on the same side of you when your permit gets petitioned. If your EOR has a signed and sealed report with a summary table, it's a lot easier to explain to the public that they're meeting the rule versus them and us digging through these calculations, trying to explain to someone that has no knowledge of stormwater, no civil engineering background, what this means and how they meet the rule. So it helps us in our review. It helps us not miss things. It answers a lot of our questions on the front end. We kind of know what we're going into and expecting. And it helps the public too if they inquire. So it's not required by rule, or finding ways to sneak it in and ask you guys for it because it really is helpful. So that ROC table we just looked at, that's used to determine your annual runoff volume for each of your separate land uses. So if you have a large site, let's do a big marina site that has a marina, a commercial development, and a residential development. They're popping up everywhere. So you might have a light industrial site or something like that for your marina, light commercial for your commercial site, and residential. Each of those separate land uses, we want to see this calculation for. You sum them together at the end, but we're looking for a calculation based on the area of each separate land use. This calculation doesn't make it obvious why that's necessary. The next one will. So again, it's the area of your basin for that land use, your average annual rainfall. That was that pretty rainbow map a couple ago that has all those nice, they look like topo lines for your rainfall for your area, and an ROC is that value we got from the table on the slide before. So the next kind of section in there, we touched on this on your land use, you're going to have an EMC value or invent mean concentration. That's the expected pollutant loading in milligrams per liter for that land use. This table's in section 9.2. This is what we reference. I will say if you're using BMP trains, there's a couple land uses light commercial, light industrial. It's one commercial. Okay. I think it's light intensity commercial. It might be light industrial. It might be both. There's a bug in BMP trains. The value does not match this table. You can go in and set a user specific value. That'll fix it. Let us know that you did that, because when we get the printout, it's going to say user inserted value. I'm not going to know what you're talking about. We have told our division office of this, people that are currently housing, working on BMP trains. It's not easy to get right now. They've been made aware of that to my knowledge, but just a heads up, it currently is an issue. Again, if you can't get it fixed, hand calcs, they're going to fix it. You can use alternate site-specific or region-specific values. You have to tell us it has to be based on a governmental study. You have to provide us that information. It's reviewed case by case. Again, you're welcome to do that. My recommendation, unless you feel very strongly about those values really, really benefit your site, and it's going to be difficult to meet the requirements without it. I'd recommend just using the tables. It's going to avoid a lot of questions. It's going to get you a permit much quicker. There's not going to be back and forth on this governmental study, but you can do it, and please do it if you feel the need to. So this is the calculations where your site use starts to matter because it includes that EMC value. So this is your annual mass loading. So it takes your annual runoff volume that we calculated 2 slides ago based off your area, rainfall, and ROC value. This is all conversion, mumbo jumbo, and then your EMC value. And then at the end, so again, for that marina site, you have a light industrial, a light commercial, residential. We've calculated annual mass loading for TN and TP for all 3 of those. So we have 6 calculations. We add all the TNs together to get 1, all the TPs together to get 1. That's your pre-development condition. Same thing in the post-development. If you have changes in EMC values, area, things like that, you're going to sum together however many TNs you have, TPs. That's what we're looking at comparing. So they have calculations in there on how to calculate. What is this? There's a couple of these reductions. Okay, so this is getting into the required TP and TN reductions or that post less than pre. This tells you what your percentage to get post less than pre. If it's greater than your 80%, 55, or whatever it is for your site, this value holds. If it's less than, your 80, 55 holds. So if for a site like that one I had earlier, it was 4 pounds per year pre-development, 25. I'm trying to remember the numbers I made up. 25 pounds per year post-development. If you do that, you're going to get a higher reduction than 80%. So I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Let's say it's 90%. That reduction is what's going to hold. So it's just a helpful tool on the design end to compare. It's not necessarily a calculation we have to see for you to prove this is what holds. We're going to know at the end when we have your final values if it's less than the pre-development or not. But it's helpful on the design end to just kind of get an idea of where you need to head. Okay. Lord, I put a lot on this slide. Okay. So this is your required loading. I like the percentages. That's how I like to look at it. But if you wanted to calculate what your post-development load needed to be to meet that pre less than post, there's a calculation here to spit out a number, tell you, hey, you need your max loading allowed is 4 pounds per year or whatever it might be. There's a way to spit that out. So as you're reducing, you kind of have a goal in mind, you have a benchmark. Again, from our perspective, we're not looking at this benchmark. We see in the end, if you're meeting 80%, post less than pre, it's easy to plug that into a calculator and look. So the other important appendix in volume 1 is Appendix O. So previously, under old rule, all of your allowable BMPs were decided by the Water Management District, and they were housed in volume 2. They are now housed in volume 1 with specific criteria for the district in volume 2. So if it's in Appendix O, you can use that BMP, even if it's not super clearly defined in volume 2. A lot of the ones that aren't defined, it's a lot of prefab systems and stuff that aren't going to have, you're not going out and digging a dry pond, you're not going out and digging a wet pond that we want to meet XYZ criteria. It's going to be a prefab system. But if it's in Appendix O, you can use it. There's criteria for alternative designs. We can do that. Essentially, if you're looking to do that, you have to demonstrate that it's equivalent to any of the BMPs in Appendix O, and it has to be on a Florida-based study or a similar climate to Florida. So I'm not saying automatically this would be allowable. It's a case-by-case thing. But if you didn't have a study for this BMP in Northwest Florida, but you had one for Pascagoula, Mississippi, I'd probably look at that and say this is a very similar climate. It's not far from Pensacola where we're housed off of. this is probably sufficient. So it doesn't have to be Florida. That's kind of how the wording is, but you know, you can do studies, give us that information, call us, let us know. The department also has a work group currently to expand Appendix O with some systems that people have inquired about and sent us information about. So Appendix O is a fluid appendix document at this moment. I don't know when that will be live, but there is a work group currently for that. Your efficiencies for your different stormwater systems are also in Appendix O. So some of them, baffle boxes, hydro separator, some of these kind of prefab things, they have a set one that we'll accept. Retention and wet detention systems are really where the calcs come in. So retention systems, they're based on tables, very, very similar to that ROC table that we had earlier. I put in a slide for this. I did not. I can try to pull one up on the screen though here in a minute. Again, it's based on your meteorological zones, so zones 1 through 5, and then it's based on your retention depth. I'll pull that up on the screen if we have time at the end to show everyone. I should have put that in here, apologies. So it's in 1/4-inch intervals, similar to the ROC table. They're not labeled great. About half of them are labeled. You get them labeled at 1/2-inch intervals, not 1/4-inch intervals. The ones in between, if you see a 1/2-inch table and an inch table, the one in between is 3/4 of an inch. I've also complained about that. But they work the same where you're finding kind of that intercepting value. Again, you can interpolate if needed for values that fall in between. But it's just tabulated from those tables. There's no calculations for it. And it's the same % reduction for TN and TP. So whatever your higher reduction is designed to that, that's what's going to hold. So if you have all sites that you don't have to worry about the post less than pre, 80% TN, 55%, or 80% TP, excuse me, 55% TN, designed to hit 80% because it's going to be the same reduction for both. Wet detention is calculation based. If you're looking to do wet detention for a site, it's very, very, very unlikely, unless you're doing a redevelopment, that you're going to meet rule. It doesn't hit the requirements. So if you're needing to do wet detention, do 2 ponds in a train, put in some vegetative buffers, make a nice treatment train for it to hit those values. Retention, if you have the space on site, if you have the soils, you can hit 90% real easy.
The separation requirement from the water table.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Separation requirement from the water table. What is it?
2 feet. So we will accept less than on case-by-case basis if we have modeling sufficient soil information to show that you're not going to get an intercepting mound.
Okay.
2 feet generally. For the wet retention, we like to see seasonal high at your control elevation. If it's a little lower, if it's slightly different, not a big deal, but that's typically kind of the benchmark we use. So retention systems, we like to see a separation of 2 feet. Detention, we like to see seasonal high at or around that control elevation. Again, calcs for wet retention, it's plug and chug. There's these calculations for the % removal. They're crazy. There's also tables that will cite it in the volume. For your annual detention time, that's his top calculation. It's what it uses to calculate your % removal. We cap it at 200 days. The reason being is after 200 days, it plateaus and you're not really getting any significant reduction from it. So if we get something that says 300 days, we're going to ask you to bump it down to 2. It's not going to change these numbers. More than 1,000 of a decimal place, it's not changing them. So just a heads up on that. Okay, so like I kind of alluded to with wet detention, it's not going to meet your treatment volume by itself. So we're really encouraging treatment trains to hit your treatment reductions. It can take up a lot more kind of linear surface space on the site. We understand that. But if you have something with a retention system where you can't dig it any deeper because you hit the water table and it stops functioning as a retention system, or other site constraints, you can put them in a train. It's not a summative treatment efficiency. It's, based on, we look at them, they act independently of one another. So we're not like, okay, these are in a system, they're acting differently now. If it goes through a vegetative buffer first, we look at the reduction from that vegetative buffer. And then if it goes into a dry retention pond, what's that reduction from the dry retention pond? Multiplying together. That's your efficiency. And again, this equation, this 9.5 for your total efficiency, it's in the handbook. So that's the biggest thing on that. Okay. Links to everything. General information on environmental resource permits. MapDirect, great source for your water tower attaining standards, and OFW. You still need to use a HUC 12 map. MapDirect does not have a HUC 12 layer built into it yet, so you still have to use that HUC 12 map, unfortunately. Also a good source if you're looking for an application or a permit that you believe exists. A little blue dot will show up on the address there if you want to try to look at historical documents or anything like that. Again, that Stormwater Resource Center that I mentioned, our division put together, it has all the changes highlighted, any new documents, the updated volumes, they're all linked there. They also have an FAQ that's up there. That is a live page. They do update it as, I don't want to say things change, but as we get better and different questions, I'm just kind of how to approach these issues. And then if you're ever looking for permits under review, you're looking for an example, you can find them here, search, and then our information portal as well if you're looking for documents on any site. And that is it from us. I'm going to try to pull up everyone online. You can't see me working on the computer. I'm going to try to pull up that appendix for the retention systems just to show everyone. So give me just a second on that. Hopefully I succeed.
All right. Well,
We will take some quick
yeah,
questions.
we have time for questions, so please feel free to drop them in the chat if you're online. Come off mute.
I think I would say this, but the presentation, we can push that out to everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll send that out afterwards. I didn't want to send it ahead
Yeah.
of time to
Yeah.
encourage attendance.
Why would it work?
Oh, it's not load.
It's not wanting to load.
Okay, do you want, I can see if I can pull it up.
I can see if I can pull it up.
Hey Ryan, good morning. This is
Yes.
Danny McCardle, City of Lynn Haven. Is this video, are you going to be distributing this video to everybody as well?
If that's okay with DEP
That's
folks, the
okay.
recording. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, then yes, we will also post the recording.
All right, I had a couple of phone calls right smack in the middle of the meeting and I had to pull away and they were right at spots that I wanted to pay attention to so I can go back and watch the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. And I think the PowerPoint will be really helpful
Who's
too.
Danny?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Danny, this is Savannah.
Hey,
You're
Savannah.
also free to email or call us, all right? If there's anything you missed that you want to ask about from the presentation,
Okay.
we're happy to answer your questions as well.
Thank you. I
Okay.
know you guys will. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's try to share my screen. Share. Host disable participant share info. No.
That may be me. I maybe so. You signed in 2 places, right?
Yes, share screen.
I can I'll send you a screenshot real quick, Ryan. Email, and you can just pull up, we get one example of it.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll just always technical difficulties. It's never clean, it's never easy.
Yeah, well, let me make.
Yeah. I thought it would let me allow anyone to share.
You're not getting a subject on this one, Ryan.
That's all right. I think we'll
While you're
survive.
working on that, one thing that we have talked about with some of the cities is permitting stormwater systems for future
Yes.
development, kind of on the, almost like crediting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so recommendations on how you would approach that. You don't necessarily know what that development is.
So my recommendation is design it bigger than you think it needs to be. So, and we still have sites that we're going to permit under that old rule that did this in the past. So we'll call them regional stormwater systems. That's what we call them. the handbook kind of calls them like compensatory systems. There's kind of different words floating out there for it. So each one is different. Under the old rule, they're all different. Some of them are based on the total site area. Some of them are based on total impervious area. Some of them are based on the volume. And we kind of remove from that. So the Pensacola Airport has a big regional pond that the city uses, and that obviously the airport itself uses. That's a volumetric one. So they have, let's say, 1 million cubic feet in there. It's very large. It's probably much larger than that. It's a very, very, very large pond. So with each application we get in that's wanting to use that pond, if they're going to use 25,000 cubic feet, we remove 25,000 cubic in the pond's capacity. So there's different ways to do it. With the percent reduction, we could look at it. We haven't had one come in yet. We could look at it, you know, with a certain, this pond can treat up to, I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this so I don't confuse everyone or myself. I think the best way to do it would be to design for a certain land use, maybe kind of the worst, scariest land use you think it's going to be, whatever has that highest EMC value. And design it to be as high impervious if you think it's going to be. That can be 80%, 90%, whatever. Kind of over design it, because how we look at them is, again, it's going to still be that kind of capacity for it. So we're going to come in and, again, make sure is this pond in the area it was designed for? Is it in the same watershed? XYZ, does it meet this? And does the pond have the treatment capability for it? So I always kind of recommend design to the worst case scenario, because if you under design the pond with a really low EMC value, not a very large area, not a lot of directly connected impervious surfaces, and then you say, hey, we want to build this big commercial or industrial development, that's going to be a lot of impervious surface, it's going to be a high EMC value, it kind of makes it difficult to address that. So we can do it. I recommend, if you're going to do that, have a pre-application meeting with us, call us. If it's a project that goes to the water management district, same thing. Again, that's how we would handle it. It's a bit more of a gray area though than compared to the old rule, because it was volumetric. Or we have it's serving a 100-acre area and they're only allowed to build up to 80 acres impervious, because it was, again, just that impervious area, just that total area. So it was a lot easier. So I think with that, we're willing to have creative solutions on how to approach it. Every site's going to be different. I'm sure what I'm telling you now, someone in a year is going to have a much better idea of how to handle it. But that's always kind of my suggestion, is design to the worst case scenario, because if it's designed to that, even if the pond is over designed, you're not going to have to redesign the pond in the future. You know, and I know with budgeting, that can be a hard thing to balance. It can be a hard thing to justify. The justification from our perspective is you're not going to come in, have an under-designed system, and we're going to say modify it. The other good thing about over designing so that you have that insured capacity is, like with these old systems, like the Pensacola Airport I just mentioned, they're grandfathered. Every site that comes to them is under old rule, because that pond was designed for those areas. So if in 5-10 years, there's another rule change with even more stringent criteria, if that site is in that area, if it's sending to that pond, it meets the criteria that you permitted under in 2026. So, you know, there's creative ways. We didn't do it under this new nutrient criteria. We, by the skin of our teeth, permitted an expansion for the Perdido landfill out in Escambia County. It's a landfill. They're building, I think, 5 or 6 new cells. It's a pretty big development. Of course, that's not going to happen right now. I think it's like a 20-25 year scope of a plan for the landfill expansion. They wanted to meet that old rule though. So they met the deadline, but we told them over design that site is 100% impervious. So as you come in and take credit from all these ponds, you never have to meet new rule, because they don't have the space to do it on that site. They don't have the water table to do it. They don't have the space to do it with all the landfill infrastructure. So that's always kind of my thing, is from an engineering perspective, look at maybe erring on the side of over design, because the last thing you want is to come in 5 or 10 years and we say this pond is under designed. So again, my call for now would be design it to the worst land use you think it's going to have, design it to the worst impervious it's going to have, so we kind of have that theoretical maximum, what it could reduce to. Again, I'm sure someone's going to have a better idea. Someone's going to sit there and think about it. a lot longer than I just did. So that's a very fluid situation, but I think kind of my understanding and advice right now is over design it. What's the worst case scenario? And we deduct from worst case scenario. Did you have another? I want to pick your brain, Alyssa. Did you have a better idea than that? Okay.
That sounds like.
With the rule with nutrient, you still have to meet your volumetric reduction and now the nutrient reduction.
So that volumetric reduction of 1 inch, that's gone. That doesn't exist.
If a city has a rule or something, then they have to meet the volumetric.
If the city or county has a separate volumetric rule, you'll have to meet that as well. So really the only quote unquote volumetric thing you would have to meet is storage for attenuation. If you look in volume 2, under each B&P treatment volume, it says what's required by Appendix O. It references you right back to volume 1. So with these, and I'll dig into these more. So if we're treating an area, we're using this 1 inch nutrient reduction criteria. Your treatment volume is 1 inch because that's what you're basing your percent reduction on. If you need a higher percent reduction and you're using 3 inches, that 3 inches has to recover within 72 hours. So it's project specific. So it's based on what percent reduction you're using and not just 1 inch over the area like it historically was. That's really it. Wet detention in volume 2, the language again throws you back to Appendix O. There is no treatment volume for wet detention. That treatment is wholly done in your permanent pool. So that volume above the permanent pool and your discharge, that's your attenuation volume. So that's also worded very confusingly in volume 2. I have complained about it because I got calls about it and I did not answer the question. So there's that 1 inch treatment volume. That is no more. Your treatment volume is what you are using to justify your percent reduction. So for retention system, that still has to recover within 72 hours. And it could be 1 inch. You could be using 1 inch to meet your reduction. If you're using 4 inches, which is as high as these tables go, you have to recover 4 inches within 72 hours.
What happens if you have a wet pond that doesn't have any discharge?
Like
Wet pond, 100-year storm, you're not popping out of the bank.
So
what would you need to see for the calculations?
So for that, you would just have to show the attenuation calculations that it's fully detaining that 100-year storm event and discharging through the orifice, at whatever controlled rate. But for that, for the percent reduction, the slide, let me go back to the slide 33. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
So this calculation, this average annual detention time, and then the percent TNT and removal, that's all we need for your water quality volume. So again, that volume that's between your control elevation and your overflow weir, that's your attenuation volume. So okay.
I will say too, on the minimum is a 0.5 inch, or is it 0.5?
It goes down to
Yeah.
a quarter inch, 0.25.
0.25 is the minimum. And we
No, not for freeboard. We don't. So the department doesn't have any freeboard requirements for wet detention. That's going to be held by your county or city.
Okay. So what is 0.25?
I don't know where you were going with that.
the minimum retention depth. I'm just talking about dry retentions. It's 0.25.
Okay.
And we do want to still see those calculations and the calculations that it is recovering that treatment volume. So if you are, like Savannah said, we need to see the amount of depth that's available in the pond if you're using 4 inches, 2 inches, and whatnot. And we want to make sure that we have calculations showing the recovery time within 72 hours. Yeah.
Okay, I'll hit the tables real quick. If we need a second, right, you can go to that last slide that you added. Yes. Okay, so this is from Appendix O. So again, very similar to those RRC tables. Again, this first cell is confusing. This Y axis, that's your CN value. This X1, that's your percent DCIA, or not DCIA, excuse me. And again, these aren't labeled well. So they are by meteorological zone. So there's a book of tables in Appendix O. So this is zone 1, again, Bay County. Again, you'll notice the bottom one is labeled, the top one is not. Unfortunately, I couldn't pull the volume, so I can't search. The one on the page above this, the last one, is 0.5 inches. So this center one is 0.75 inches. So they're not labeled great. If you're looking at a table that's not labeled, look at the table above and below it, go in the middle. So sorry about that. Again, I have made a comment about that because when I started trying to teach myself this rule, I opened this volume up and I said, which column and row is which? And what is this for? And I got several questions about same thing. A week or two later, people tell me, this table's not labeled. I'm like, I know, I make it. So again, if you're looking at an unlabeled table, look above and below it, go in the middle. And again, for your CN and your percent, this is for post-development only, because it's for your retention system. So it doesn't allow for 0% DCIA. We've been telling everyone if it's a really low site, just round up to 5. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to give you more efficiency actually. So just bump up to it. You're not going to have a CN value of just 5. So that's kind of how I logically remind myself and work through it, is what makes sense mainly with that CN value. I can't have a CN value of 0. I'm not going to have a CN value of 5, but 30, that's reasonable. So, and if you have a site that's wholly, we got this question last week and I started typing up an email. I felt so stupid as I started typing up the email. It was a good question. What if you have a site that is 100% DCIA? There's no non-DCIA curve number. And I'm like, oh, that's a good question because the tables are based on that. If it's 100% DCIA, the numbers are the same straight down the table. So you don't have to give us your non-directly connected CN. It's the same down the table. So that was a good lesson. I'm like, that's a good question. I started typing the email to our division office, getting upset, like, this doesn't make sense. And I looked at the table. So I was going to send him a screenshot. I'm like, oh, I didn't look. So any other questions online in the room?
I have another question.
Yes.
So if you are trying to work on a regional pond,
Mhm.
you have to meet the nutrient reductions at the HUC 12.
Yes.
And let's say there's an ordinance that you also have volume.
Mhm.
So you can technically meet those across that HUC 12, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're correct. So if you have this large regional basin, again, we would just look at what basin is it serving, where is the pond located, where is the pond discharging, just like if it was a new McDonald's with one pond, the simplest, most straightforward site. So even if it's a big regional system, with the, if you have a big kind of regional area that's crossing multiple HUC 12s, again, I'd recommend calling us, reaching out. I think would be a case-by-case thing. My initial call is if you're treating the water and discharging, that's the HUC 12 we're probably going to look at. Again, we haven't had these questions coming yet. Thank you for asking. They're good questions. But if the basin that it's serving itself is crossing multiple, let us know. Again, the big concern that moves it from that all sites criteria to your impaired and OFW is based on where you're treating and where you're discharging. So to me, that's why my initial thought is kind of, well, where's that regional pond? I don't want to say that's the case for everything. If it's some insanely large basin that most of the basins in the different HUC 12, but your pond's barely in the other, that might be a case where we're looking at both. But if it's mainly in one HUC 12 and the basins it's serving is just kind of clipping others, my call would be we're just looking at the pond. But if you have a large area that you're capturing and treating in one HUC 12, I think it's, kind of point for discussion. Doesn't mean that answer would change. I just think, again, it's
the HUC 12 are just so large.
They're so large. And the amount of projects we've been sent where their site and their pond is on the borderline of the HUC 12, I don't know how they're doing that. It's all on military bases.
Yeah.
I don't know what everyone's doing. Every site they're building is on the boundary of a HUC 12. And they're asking me good questions. Me saying they keep asking me questions is not a complaint. But they're like, how do we look at this? I'm like, I don't know. I think we got to look at both. Your ponds, you somehow designed a site where the pond is being bisected by the HUC 12 line. What are the chances? But they're doing it. So there'll be my case study for how to handle some of those things.
Any questions online?
No.
Okay. And again, if you guys think of questions later as you're working on a project or you get the presentation and look at it, give me a phone call. Email would be better. I'm not always great about answering my phone, but if you leave a voicemail, let me know what you need. I'll give you a call back. With emails, a lot of times I like to send screenshots and pictures. I explain that better than words. So if you're similar, email me. And again, we're a lot more comfortable with this than we were when it was implemented at the end of December. We're much more comfortable than we were. I was going to say 6 months ago, but that's when it was implemented, just about. But last fall or last summer, we get questions, I won't say every day, but every week that someone comes in, they're working on a site with a question that I don't have the answer to. We like to hear them. It helps us understand the rule better. It helps us answer questions in the future better. But just kind of a fair warning, you might call or email me and ask me a question. I'm going to say, I don't know. We'll get that answer for you. I've kind of been telling everyone when we've had those questions come in, our division office is getting these from all the DEP districts, at some level from all the water management districts as well. They're the ones to answer the questions. That's their job, but they are kind of being overburdened with them at the moment. So it could take a while to get an answer back. We're going to try our best to reach out to them as quick as we can, get back to you, but there is kind of a lag time with them. Alyssa and I are in statewide calls bi-weekly where questions come up. There's discussions from all the DEP districts, our division office, all the water management districts. So we do get questions in there too that we haven't had yet, we haven't thought about, but are popping up elsewhere in the state. Some of them are as applicable. South Florida is very, very different from North Florida, as we all know. But so we are in constant communication with our division office, our counterparts at Northwest Florida Water Management District, other DEP and water management districts. So a warning, it might take a week or two to get an answer, but we're asking those. We want to know just as much as you guys, because they're good questions. When we had that old presumptive criteria rule, it was very rarely that we got a question in that we couldn't answer or at least talk through and try to come to a solution. We're not there yet with this, so let us know. We kind of experienced this on the regulatory side doing reviews. You don't really have questions until you start doing it and you find bugs in your logic or your approach, or maybe things in the rule that aren't quite clear. So let us know when it comes up. I hate for that to be the answer, but we're 5 months into a new rule. It's not solved yet. So, and again, there's been some things like I've mentioned, like these tables, that work group for expanding Appendix O. So there are active things going on to make these resources better. Again, I don't know when those things will be made live, but there are active efforts to improve the handbook, not change the approach, but maybe improve some of the language in it. Particularly at the beginning of my part of the presentation, I was talking about what is an impaired water body. Well, we're looking at category 4A, B, and 4A, 4B, and 5. That's not in volume 1. That's not listed. They told us that after the fact. Or how there's more kind of flexibility for non-nutrient related impairments, how we don't necessarily in all cases, or even in most cases, look at that as a true and impaired water body, unless it's TNTP or fill something that's nutrient related. That's also not the rule. That's been a discussion. So, and that's why a lot of that stuff wasn't in the slides, because it's just a fluid discussion. And we had conversations in February and had not a completely different, but a slightly different answer than we do today. So it's kind of the situation. It's very fluid. There were things that weren't included in the handbook that when we had people start designing to this rule, submitting projects to this rule, that were kind of caught in it, that kind of on the regulatory side and on the private consulting side, or from a city or other governmental perspective, we're having to troubleshoot live and in the moment. So I was expecting worse questions. You guys could be meaner to me.
Any last questions from anyone online?
Specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recommend.
Hey, I did have
For
one
all
quick
this-
question.
Yes.
Like backyard areas, like a residential subdivision, the backyard areas draining to a vegetated natural buffer. Is it assumed that all of the drainage area that would be treated by a V&B meets the current criteria?
So V&Bs per Appendix O and per the new rule are considered a retention system. So they're being treated just like a dry retention pond. Obviously, they are not holding volume like a retention system. It's kind of based off the flow, the overland flow. For I think most of them we're seeing a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. Is that what you've seen, Alyssa? You've had more B&B projects than I have.
Yeah.
So just a very low rainfall depth across those. They don't really tick a high percent reduction. I will say though, with residential projects and with any project, we are looking holistically at the percent reduction. So if you have a basin that isn't meeting that all sites criteria, that 80-55, but holistically the site does, that's fine. So if you have, you know, the real portions of residential lots that are going through a V&B and those V&Bs aren't capable of hitting that 80% TP reduction, and they're probably not going to be just one. Alyssa has a site now that there's several V&Bs in series, and that's how they're hitting that. But if your retention systems, wet detention systems, the other stormwater infrastructure you have throughout the residential development is providing excess treatment, and that kind of average comes out to that 80-55, the site is good. So if basin 1 doesn't meet the rule, but the sum of all the basins does, the site meets rule.
Did that spark any other questions from anyone? All right.
If anyone is wanting to have a meeting to discuss, the best way to do that, unless it's a question that can be answered in a quick phone call or email, if you want to discuss the whole project, schedule a pre-application meeting with us. If you Google FDEP pre-application meeting, it'll show up. It's on the Northwest District's main webpage. If you need a link, email Alyssa or I will send a link to you. If you call or email me and say, I need to schedule a pre-app, you're getting a link from me. I get somewhere probably between 2 and 5 of those phone calls every day. And I cannot schedule meetings for everyone. You'll get a meeting, but pre-app's the best way to do it. Especially if you have anything that's going to have wetland impacts in water work. I can't answer those questions for you guys. I'm not going to try, or if it's anything unique. You know, again, if it's a quick question, you know, particularly about the chapter or the handbooks, call me, email me. We can answer those. Site-specific pre-app's really the best way to do it. With pre-apps, like I said, I get like 2 to 5 calls a day asking for a meeting. We do pre-apps on Thursdays. Alyssa and I send about 4 to 5 every week on Thursdays. We do other programs the rest of the week for pre-apps. So they tend to be scheduled about 3, sometimes 4 weeks out. So if you're looking on coming up, you know, and for our pre-apps, it's just a discussion. You don't have to have a project designed. You don't have to be ready for a submittal. We get some that it's just an idea that they want to discuss. We get it at all stages. It's your meeting. It's how you want to use it. But I tell you the timeline because we get a lot of people that they want a pre-app, but they're ready to submit tomorrow or next week. It's not going to happen that quickly. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If you're looking to have a pre-app, sometime in mid-July, reach out to us sometime in mid-June. So, and we can always schedule further out if we don't schedule them. Her name's Brandy Scott in our office. She's the coordinator for those. If she reaches out and gives you a sooner date and that's not good, ask for one a week or 2 later. She'll schedule that. But they do book up pretty fast. So they do tend to get scheduled typically about 3 weeks out. And I cannot fix it for you because I also get those calls. This meeting is a month out. Can you fix it? No, that's my calendar. They're putting them on my calendar that's filled up. So, you know, they're typically half an hour. If you have a really big site, something that's like a regional system, you can request more time. If half an hour is not going to work, let Brandy know. She'll schedule you for an hour. We typically do them on Teams. If you want to drive out to Pensacola, we're welcome to do it in person. But they're typically half an hour. Again, typically scheduled 3 weeks out. So prepare for that. And if you need more than half an hour, coordinate that with Brandy. We can do them longer. That's just kind of the standard. So we can fit as many into a Thursday as possible. And again, call, email me. Happy to answer questions. Again, especially project specific, I get a lot of questions that Alyssa and I don't have an answer to. We're here to figure them out for you, facilitate that through us, and we'll get you guys an answer as quickly as we can.
Yeah, my contact information's not up there, but I do have some business cards. you want to contact me as well, I also work on the stormwater engineering side, so.
Maybe I can add yours in before I send it.
Yes, that would be fine.
Yep.
We didn't know who was going when we made the
Yeah.
presentation.
No worries.
I knew I was going.
All right. Any final questions? Okay, well, with that, we will say thank you very much, Savannah and Alyssa, for coming and giving us a great rundown. We really appreciate it. We will follow up with the PowerPoint and the recording once we get that kind of edited and posted for anyone that registered. So,
One final question.
Oh,
yes.
CEUs for engineers, are you guys providing?
DEP doesn't have that for engineers, so you can try with the board. But we unfortunately don't have that, so I don't know if that was facilitated through you guys, because I had that question too. I'm like, do I get one for presenting?
yeah, me either. Yeah,
We should probably look in
yeah.
the future, but.
Not
Sorry.
CEUs, but there is a stormwater class.
Oh, you
that
can get
they have.
PEUs for it.
You can?
It's CEUs and PDHs. I think it's a slightly different conversion. So it's not in here. If you have questions, you can email it. Also, I can send you a link. It's through the UF IFAS program. It's the Stormwater Inspector Training, Stormwater Qualified Inspector Training. I think that's it's called
NPDES,
Yeah.
NPDES, no.
MPD. So there is an MPDS side to it. It is mainly based on ERP though. So the department used to offer kind of that MPDS inspector training. This is based on the ERP rule. I'm currently trying to work through it because they said you have to sign up, and I'm really busy and I'm trying to work through it. But it's through UF IFAS. So in the updated section 12 of volume 1 for your inspections, there's 3 entities now that can inspect your stormwater management systems at the required frequency. It used to just be Florida licensed PEs. So they've expanded that now to Florida licensed PEs, an engineer working directly under a Florida licensed PEs, or a qualified stormwater inspector. That SQUINT course gives you the license, or not the license, the certification to do those inspections. I think it's $100. And for PE, PDHs, I think it's 9. There are CEUs for it. I'm not sure if it was 9. There were different numbers on there. I don't remember. Like I said, I'm currently going through it. I haven't gotten deep into the weeds yet. I've only done like the first 2 modules. But it is a great introduction into just stormwater as a whole. Both on kind of, a technical engineering side as like kind of a design engineer. It mainly focuses on the inspection since it is an inspector training, but it does a good job of kind of explaining, what the MPDS perspective is, what the ERP perspective is, kind of how to interpret the calculations, the drawings, especially for people that are unfamiliar. I know our compliance staff are going to have to go through this. I don't know if they started, because I historically got a lot of questions. Hey, we have a big stormwater problem. Can you come out the field with me? Okay. Just because there wasn't, in our office at least, a lot of good opportunity for the people on that team to really get that good kind of engineer perspective training on how to interpret these drawings, these reports, how to go and look at these systems. So it is a really good overview. Again, you get that certification, I think. And PDHCUs, that's included in the course. And again, I think it's only $100. DEP, so for DEP staff, we are able to do it for free. I'm not sure if a similar deal could be worked out for like county or city staff. I do not want to speak for UF and why we got that. But I think it's certainly, worth a question for any city or county staff if something similar could be applied. So.
All right, now we will officially wrap up. For those in the room, please feel free to get some snacks, and we'll hang out for a little bit for any other questions. All right, thank you everyone for joining us online.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you.
I appreciate your time. Definitely, please, if I can get a copy of that video.
Yep.
Few things we need
Well,
to pay attention too.
We'll send it out.
And I just want to watch it again. So you ladies have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.